Which direction will Bosnia take after its election? It's hoped the vote would bridge deep ethnic divides in this Balkan country. But with it still bearing the scars of civil war in the 1990s, is change possible? And what role can outside powers play? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Hazem, Sika. Well, preliminary results from elections in Bosnia Herzegovina on Sunday show reformists and moderates winning the Croat and Bosnian presidential seats. But overall, the outcome is unlikely to bring much change nor movement beyond entrenched divisions in the country. The vote was held to elect 3 members of the shared presidency, plus national and regional parliaments. The Serb seat remains unclear, with both candidates claiming victory. The campaign was dominated by nationalist and separatist rhetoric and is seen as the most important vote since the end of the war in 1995. Asad Beg has more for us from Sarajevo.
Bosnia and Herzegovina has spoken. 2 of the 3 seats in the presidential election have gone to reformist moderate candidates. Separatist Serb Jelko Ivanovic has won the presidential seat for Republika Srpska. Both Bosniak and Croat winners called for unity and the need to move forward.
The lives of our people in this country are the most important, and that's why I call on all people to unite so that the citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina will be better off.
Congratulations to all citizens of Bosnia for this victory of my party and myself. Now we can really talk about big changes in Bosnia.
But the evening was overshadowed by High Representative for Bosnia, Christian Schmidt. As polls closed, he announced he would be making changes to the constitution, electoral law and to the size of the lower parliament.
With today's decisions, no political party or anybody elected will be able to hold the federation hostage anymore.
The fear was if a Croat separatist candidate was elected to the Croat seat, then it would increase tensions. It would have given 2/3 of the presidency control over specific state institutions. Separatist leader Milorad Dodik declared victory for the presidency of the Republika Srpska entity.
I am proud that I was the candidate and now confirmed president of Republic of Srpska, and I will do everything so that Republic of Srpska continues to be stable, to conduct its own policy, to cooperate with our important partners like Serbia, Russia and Hungary.
Voter turnout was at 50%, the lowest the country has seen since after the war that ended in 1995.
I voted, that's my duty, but there is no change for the people. It is just a rotation.
Every change is good if good people are leading, no matter if they are red, yellow, white or blue, if it is good for the country.
And change will take a great deal of effort from all political parties. Politicians in the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina face the same challenges as before the elections. They still have to contend with 2 separatist Serb presidents. And although it may be a consolation to some that the separatist Croat wasn't elected, constitutional and electoral law changes are also being imposed on them by the High Representative, someone Bosnians didn't vote for.
Asad Beg, Inside Story, Sarajevo.
Bosnia's elections are among the most complicated in the world, set up to maintain peace following the breakup of Yugoslavia in 1992 and the civil war that followed. At state level, it has a 3-way presidency, with each member elected to represent one of 3 ethnic groups. It's split between Eastern Orthodox Serbs, Catholic Croats and Muslim Bosniaks. Representatives can block legislation passed by the lower house if they feel it is against the interests of their group. That's a part of the system often blamed for a lack of progress in the country. One body also oversees the political factions. The Office of the High Representative is an international initiative put in place in 1995 to ease ethnic divides. But critics say it takes power away from the people, while supporters credit it with keeping the country together. Well, let's bring in our guest now to talk more about this. In the Bosnian capital, Sarajevo, Hikmet Karcic, an academic and author. In Berlin, we have Bodo Weber, Senior Associate at Democratization Policy Council. And joining us from Mostar in Bosnia, Amna Popovac, a political activist and member of the Women Waging Peace Network. Good to have you all with us. So, Hikmet Karcic, let me start by asking you, what do the results of these elections represent to you?
Well, firstly, to say that it is really good that the moderate and reformist forces have won in the presidency. That isn't the case in the parliament, where ethno-nationalist parties won a majority of the vote. But in the presidency, what was very important is that these forces won, especially in the Bosniak and in the Croat members of the presidency. However, what is troubling is that the Serb member of the presidency, Željko Cvijanović, belongs to a pro-Russian Serb separatist party. So what is troubling for me personally is that the Bosnian EU and NATO pact could be endangered when having a person such as this in the presidency. In other areas of the federation and the entity level, and in the cantonal level, we have seen a lot of changes in the sense that some smaller parties have won some majority of the votes. So a lot of things might be slightly changed in the sense of internal Bosnian politics. But when talking about the state representation and so on, it is good that pro-Bosnian forces are still a majority in the presidency.
Bodo Weber, what do you take from these results?
Oh, well, I would draw attention a little bit away from the very results. Just to note, which I think on context is important, that the political and electoral system in Bosnia, as designed in Dayton and remained more or less unchanged since the end of the war, is not a competitive Western democracy. It's a system based on an alliance of three ethnic oligarchies, and it has such breaks that partial shifts happening from election to election, moving some percentage over to multi-ethnic parties, does not and cannot lead to a change. So I think in that sense, we have not seen the major changes in the election. The one thing that Mr. Karcic mentioned is important in the current geopolitical Ukraine war context is that the nationalist pro-Russian forces, starting with the Serb member, the main Serb party from the Republika Srpska and the Croat allies, will not have a majority in the three-member presidency that sets the foreign policy. But apart from that, really, I would not overstress the results. The main event from my point of view, and these elections has happened 1 hour after closing the ballot boxes, closing the voting in Bosnia on Sunday, and that was the imposition by the High Representative, the German Christian Schmidt, a very dangerous precedent, imposition of changes to the electoral system 1 hour after the vote, which is both by the timing completely undemocratic and by the rationale and the content of these amendments to the electoral and the constitutional system of the country is really dangerously going into the wrong direction.
Yeah, you're talking here about the envoy, Christian Schmidt, and the changes that he imposed, what he said were measures for improving the functionality of government in Bosnia. And we can talk more about that in a moment. But I want to get Amna Popovac's take on the results and what you draw from this. Is this a victory for the status quo, or is there more to it there?
As my colleagues before said, it's more inside of Bosnia and Herzegovina is more status quo. Nothing will change. Same parties as from 90s, even from 96, who won the elections. They still continue to win elections, and they are the biggest coalitions. They support each other, and they will continue to work inside of the country the same. We might see some improvements in the foreign policy, thanks to these two pro-civilian, no-nationalistic members of the presidency. Yes, we will still have this one pro-Russian and nationalistic member of the presidency. But I think that she will not be able to do such a lot of harm as Milorad Dodik before her. So I expect much more movement from Bosnia and Herzegovina from east toward west. So from Russia and Turkey, heads of the people should be turned, or all countries should be turned now to Brussels and EU. And this is what I expect to see in the next 4 years. The speech that Social Democrat Denis Bečirević had at the announcement of his victory was very good. It was very healing for everybody who live here in Bosnia and Herzegovina and love this country. And there are still Serbs, Croats and Bosnians who love this country and want to have to continue their lives here. So there is a glimpse of hope, not such a big, but still small glimpse of hope for the people in this country seeing these members of the presidency. Everyday life will not be such different, but we will see outside of Bosnia and Herzegovina some improvement. This is what we expect to see here.
Well, let's talk more then about this decision by the High Representative Christian Schmidt to make changes to the way that the country is governed in a way that one side cannot act as a veto or block on the other. And the point was made by our correspondent there in the report that these changes are being made by someone who is not elected by Bosnians. Is that a problem for you, Hikmet Karcic?
Well, it is in one way, but what is more shocking is that in this way, ethno-politics, especially from the Croatian side, will be deeply cemented in the future. So that means that in 4 years' time, we will know directly which party will win the elections. And that is the Croat separatist HDZ party. So that is a problem here. Instead of going forward, the High Representative has decided to even more deepen and cement the already existing political and ethnic divide, and to have some sort of ethnicized politics instead of making it much more democratic, much more European. So instead of having European values brought into the elections, we're having a much more higher bureaucracy right now. So the House of Peoples, for example, will be able will be double the size it is now. So we'll have more politicians in power, and which means more public funds being wasted on that. And secondly, they will be able to blockade some certain political decisions, or to be very frank, it will just harden the lives of Bosnians in the future.
Bodo, just to pick up on what you said earlier about the role of the High Representative Christian Schmidt in all of this and its undemocratic nature, if you will. And there were those who will not disagree with you on that point, in that this is supposed to be a democracy, and this is a flaw in that system. But is it a necessary flaw in the sense that it ensures that the deep divisions in the country don't spill over, that there is a kind of level playing field that remains? What do you say to that?
You see, I think that the problem here is that, and that this is part of the problem with this wrong way of intervening by the High Representative, is that this gives ammunition to actors in the West and in the East, starting with Russia, who insist that the very institution of the High Representative should be gone. This is not the course and not the solution. The problem here is the following. The West intervened into the Bosnian war. It stopped it by a dirty agreement with the domestic warring factions by installing a Dayton constitutional and electoral system that is based on ethnic power sharing. This is not democratic. But this was meant to be a provisional, government and constitutional arrangement to end the war, to be later replaced by a democratic functional political system. Now, the problem was that the West for 3/4 of a decade after the war, has partly reformed and changed that system until summer 2005. But then in the context of the Iraq war, they were trying to run away from their responsibility, and they were trying to leave the country unsustainable in its constitutional order as it is to the local elites. And that has not functioned. It has thrown back the country into the original mode of mutual lifting of ethnic tension as a basic for patronage system of, mutually reinforcing ethnic oligarchy system. And instead of correcting its course, the West for the last 17 years have been trying to, not seize responsibility, have a decisive policy, but keep a fake, a semblance of a fake stability in Bosnia by permanently appeasing nationalist elites and their agendas. This policy has escalated over the last 2 years with EU and low-level EU and US officials wiping out previous red lines when it comes to the defense of democratic principles in Bosnia. And they have started to negotiate on the terms of the biggest Croat nationalist party, the HDZ, on a so-called reform of the electoral system. Now that negotiations didn't lead to a result because the other sides, particularly the Bosniaks, saw what it is, giving in to nationalist agendas that would lead to formalizing the deepening of the ethnic and ethno-territorial divisions in Bosnia that would ultimately lead to a breakup of the country. But as a result of these failed negotiations, by having propped up and encouraged the Croat nationalist side, we have entered an election where the Croat nationalist party threatened with a political crisis after elections, preventing implementation of election results if their political agenda is not partly met by the West. And Mr. Schmidt, unfortunately bullied by the US administration, which is really continuing more a Trump administration policy than a Biden administration policy when it comes to democratic values, has pushed Mr. Schmidt to partly give in, to make some decisions that take away the tools for the HDZ to do a blockage of implementation of election results that needs to prevent a crisis in return for partly giving in to their nationalist demands. And it has done so. He has tried to do it in the midst of the election campaign, which would have meant changing the rules of the game within the campaign, which is deeply undemocratic. He has now done the worst of both worlds. He has done it even after the citizens of Bosnia, an hour after they have finished putting their vote, which means this is both undemocratic and it's not leading to a more democratic, it's leading to a more ethnic oligarchic system that will really lead the country more to division.
Let's get Amna Popovac's take on this and the role of Christian Schmidt here. Is it fundamentally undemocratic, a way of just kind of papering over the cracks and appeasing too many people, particularly the nationalist groups, as Bodo Weber says?
It is, but unfortunately, his powers are written in a Dayton peace agreement, so there is nothing we can do it at the moment. The people of Bosnia and Herzegovina, majority of them, like to have some office like that. Not now it's Mr. Schmidt, before it was the other person. So we like to have office of the High Representative simply because nationalistic parties would destroy this country much faster without it. Nationalistic parties, or those parties who are ruling parties for the last 30 years, are the same ones who were who participated and won first multi-party elections during like when Bosnia and Herzegovina proclaimed independence. So they won again in '96, and from '96 they are winning elections. So we cannot expect from the same people who were politically active before the war, who were active during the war, who were active during the signing of the Dayton Peace Agreement, and some of them were involved into negotiations, and now they are ruling this country. So how we can expect them to make any change? They don't want to do any change. They want to keep status quo as long as possible. So that's the reason why we need Office of the High Representative to bring in some changes. Some changes we like, some changes we don't. there are a lot of laws in Bosnia and Herzegovina perfectly written, but are not implemented. So for the Mr. Schmidt's decision about changing of election law and partially changing of Constitution of Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, let's see how it will work in the real life. Let's give it a chance and see how HDZ will now block or gain more in a new system. Now, when he pulled out some wheels from their cars, so let's see how it will work. I personally don't like that we have patronage over the Bosnia and Herzegovina. That means that we are not democratic, and we are not democratic country. We just think that we are like that. We have elections, but we are not sure that the numbers that are published after the elections are real numbers that people voted. Now there is a big question in Republika Srpska whether really Milorad Dodik won the elections or his election machine won the elections.
All right.
So there is a big discussion now who really won the elections in Republika Srpska. And for me, it's also a big question why he didn't run for the second mandate as a member of the presidency, because his colleague Željka Cvijanović, she won perfectly. There is a big question why he decided to run just for the member or for the president of the Republika Srpska, of the half of the country.
Let's broaden this out a little bit more and talk more about what this means for foreign policy. Hikmet, I know we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but what do you think these elections mean for Bosnia's foreign policy and the various factions within the country? You mentioned about pro-Russian factions and pro-Western factions.
Well, I mean, the most troubling part for me is that two countries supported Milorad Dodik's and the Serb nationalist separatist movements, and that is Viktor Orban from Hungary and Vladimir Putin from Russia. So this tells you a lot. I mean, if these are the two people with whom Dodik met several days before the elections, so several weeks before the elections, that is very, very troubling news. Because we have one country which is a member of the EU, which is entirely in the far-right sphere, that is Hungary and Viktor Orban's political movement. On the other side, we have a country which is currently involved in an act of aggression and war crimes, and that is Russia. So we are right now entering a new phase in which probably Milorad Dodik will start doing what he has been promising his voters for a long time, and that is with the support of Serbia, to try and to proclaim independence for the Bosnian Serb entity, for Republika Srpska, and to secede in the near future. And also, what is important to notice is that the election law, which was imposed by Christian Smith, was something which was heavily lobbied by Croatia proper. So for the last couple of years, Croatia and Zagreb has been lobbying different countries, mostly in the United States and in the West, to support an election law which would cement the power-sharing atmosphere in Bosnia. And unfortunately, this has happened two nights earlier, which means that Bosnia will, in the future, be controlled not only by its neighbors, by Croatia and by Belgrade, but also deeply influenced by Russia, Hungary, and other countries as well.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks very much to all three of you, Hikmet, Karcic, Bodo Weber, and Amna, Popovac. Thanks very much for being on Inside Story. And thank you as well for watching. Remember, you can see this program again anytime. Just go to our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, you can go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle there is @AJ Inside Story. For me, Hazem, Sika, and the whole team here, bye for now.